Listen, I didn't want to make this video. I was planning to finish up Wizard Mode in Medieval Madness, but unfortunately, that pinball game is going to have to wait, as I keep hearing rumbling about cyber attacks. Here's a statement on the White House website. It's entitled, "Act Now to Protect Against Potential Cyber Attacks." Now, while Photics TV isn't meant to be a political channel, I think there are enough clues here for you to realize that I'm not a big fan of Joe Biden. So, if I'm putting their news pieces in this video, it's kinda serious. However, this video is not to incite panic. In fact, if you're watching it, then you probably have internet access. That's good. Things are not quite Mad Max just yet. And hopefully never. I like technology. I also like people. The notion that there are too many people on this planet is false. Life is precious. You are precious. And space is infinite. So the goal here is to educate you in order to avoid disaster, or at least mitigate the negative effects of such calamities. This video starts a new series of tech security and preparedness. The focus of this video is prevention, not catastrophe. Although Apple did have some unusual outages this week. While I don't know the exact cause of the outages, it was one of the reasons why I started taking the potential threat of cyber attacks more seriously. That's where we can start. We're in the realm of information technology. Most of that information is tied to big tech companies, such as Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Apple. Whether you're an individual or working with a large organization, odds are that you're using services from big tech. So, a good way to prepare for a cyber attack is to separate fact from fiction. In a large-scale cyber attack, services will go down. Since people expect the big tech sites to always be working, the initial stages of an attack will likely be filled with confusion. You might wonder, is it me? Is my internet down? That's why the status sites are helpful. Apple has a system status page. If you use one or more of their services, then it's useful to know if something's wrong. As an example, there are lots of Apple Arcade videos on Photics TV. Yet, I didn't even know that there was an outage recently. That's what makes this listing especially useful. How would you check if Apple was offline? The Apple.com website might be online, but that won't help you if you're working on a project in iCloud and then suddenly things start getting weird. That's why the description of this video is full of links. The link to Apple's system status page will be in the Big Tech Status Reports section. If you're using Google services, they have an app status dashboard. It's entitled as the Google Workspace Status Dashboard. This is great for seeing if there is, or recently was, trouble with services like Gmail, Google Docs, Google Meet, or Google Voice. If you're a publisher where you work with services like Google Ads, AdSense, or Google Analytics, there's also the Google Ads Status Dashboard. After looking at both of the Google pages, I was surprised to learn that there were recent service disruptions. That's an important lesson. These companies are big, but they're not invulnerable. Not only do they have technical issues to manage, they're constantly under attack. Now that big tech has been pulling their services from Russia as a result of the invasion of Ukraine, big tech becomes a prime target in a cyber attack. Even if you hate the big tech companies, if they fall even momentarily, that could have a devastating effect on the global economy. And even if you don't use their services, even if you live in an off-grid cabin in the woods, the grocery down the road might. Perhaps they have a website hosted by Amazon Web Services, AWS for short. They too have a status page. It's entitled General Service Events, where you can view the overall health of AWS services. It's a really long list. That's what's especially interesting when Amazon fails. You can see which companies rely on AWS for web hosting. AWS is quite involved, so I'll leave a link to the AWS Health Guide in the description. Perhaps Microsoft is your main tech crush. If you love Microsoft services, they too have a status report page. It's called Service Health. It displays the current status of Microsoft services like Outlook.com, OneDrive, Skype, and Teams. The point is that you can prepare for a cyber attack by creating an inventory of third-party services that you rely upon. Then see if there's a status report page, and then figure out contingency plans in the event that the service is down. As an example, you might use GitHub to manage your code. They have a nice status report page. And what? There appears to be a problem. At the time this video was created, GitHub appears to be experiencing a partial outage. Personally, I use Git, but I don't use GitHub to store my code. So I'm okay, right? Wrong. I actually download a lot of software from GitHub. That's why this matters. That's why every life matters. We're all part of a big system that allows people to specialize. It is that specialization that allows civilization to move forward. You could be a simple farmer, but you might be growing the tomatoes that make the pizza that feed the engineers that are developing the technology to take humanity into space. Everyone matters. That's precisely why this modern warfare is especially troublesome. Everyone with a computer, which is pretty much everyone, is on the front line of this battle. This is also why I begrudgingly mention the White House press statement. I read it, and the information is good. Here's an example. Software developers are responsible for all code used in their products, including open source code. Most software is built using many different components and libraries, much of which is open source. Make sure developers know the provenance, i.e. origin, of components they are using and have a software bill of materials, in case one of those components is later found to have a vulnerability, so you can rapidly correct it. This is one of the most stressful aspects of being a web developer. As an example, if you've used a content management system called Drupal, they had an issue known as Drupalgeddon. Basically, if you didn't update Drupal on the same day of the alert, it was recommended that you consider your website to be hacked. Yay! The problem is the catch-22 that this creates. If you update your software as soon as it's released, unexpected errors might cause big problems. But if you don't update your software, hackers might get you. So, what can you do? Well, at least be informed. That will help you to make better decisions. That's why I like the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency website, CISA.gov. They have security alert feeds for popular tech software. Their weekly bulletins and general alerts feeds can let you know of trouble with software that you might be using or particularly nasty cybersecurity threats. Here's one example of an alert. It's entitled, Russian state-sponsored cyber actors gain network access by exploiting default multi-factor authentication protocols and print nightmare vulnerability. That sounds scary, right? Well, system administrators deal with issues like that all the time. So, if you know someone that works in tech, and they seem unusually grumpy, like all the time, this stuff is one of the reasons why. Since this video is more about general information, here's an important takeaway from the article. Multi-factor authentication, MFA, a cybersecurity essential. MFA is one of the most important cybersecurity practices to reduce the risk of intrusions according to industry research. Users who enable MFA are up to 99% less likely to have an account compromised. So, if you're not using multi-factor authentication, now might be a very good time to start doing that. If you're part of a large organization, they probably have something set up. That goes for websites that you're using too. The aforementioned GitHub has two-factor authentication. If you're a software developer, that's huge. You don't want your software to be compromised and then distributed to thousands or even millions of people. But hey, this video was made for YouTube, so there's an interesting story about that. In order to enable monetization for Photics TV, one of the 4 requirements is to enable two-step verification. According to this YouTube support document, it started on November 1st, 2021. So that should tell you how serious things are getting. Two-factor authentication is actually the first point in the White House document. It says, mandate the use of multi-factor authentication on your systems to make it harder for attackers to get onto your system. There's useful information in some of the other items too, such as backing up your data, encrypting your data, and running exercises to prepare for a cyber attack. I'll leave a link to the White House article in the description. So that's a lot of useful information to start getting prepared in the event of a cyber attack. If you want a more in-depth video on a particular topic mentioned here, you can leave a comment to request it. But in summary, be informed. The CISA feeds help with that, but you can go further. Depending on which software or websites you use, there may be other resources available. If something weird is going on, check the big tech status reports. They might be having trouble. Cutting through the confusion is critical in a major cyber attack. Two-factor authentication is huge in preventing cyber attackers from gaining ground. Look to see where it's available, not just at your organization, but with popular websites too. Anyway, that's it for this video. It's certainly a change of pace from my Crossy Road videos, but this is the kind of stuff that keeps online gaming safe to play. More videos like this one are planned for the future, along with fun videos about Crossy Road and Zen Pinball Party too. So, if that sounds interesting to you, subscribe to Photics TV. Thanks for watching.